Hello and welcome. We have
Thank
with
you.
us Professor Usha, Professor of Management, West Virginia University, USA. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. To begin with, what do you think of the initiative which has been undertaken by World Trade Center and All India Association of Industries, and how do you think it will benefit the SME sector at large?
Well, I think it's a great effort. I think it markets India, it draws attention to India's strength and India's transformation.
And what investment opportunities and futures do you see in the Asian markets?
Well, as was brought out in today's talks, India is a quarter of the world's population, and along with China, half the world's population. But India has another advantage. India is an enormously young country, and about half of all Indians are under the age of 35. By the year 2030, 1 in every 6 people, hang on, let me back up just a little bit here on my statistics. A third of India will be under the age of 30, and that would make it the youngest country in the world. So it's a huge market.
What kind of resources and opportunities would you like to highlight about your nation to the other countries?
I'm sorry?
What kind of resources and opportunities would you like to highlight about your region to the other countries?
My region? You mean the United States?
Yes.
Well, the United States and India are at different stages of development. The United States is an industrialized country which is sparsely populated and would have a negative population growth if it wasn't for immigration. India, on the other hand, is a populous and very young country in transition. But they have some similarity in that they are both democracies. India has among the freest presses in the world, and and that's a source of strength. The Indian democracy works. And as you know, Indians have been very successful in the United States. There's an Indian work ethic, an Indian way of approaching problems, which have benefited the United States. So I think it's both ways, really.
The theme is Asia powering global markets.
Yes.
How do you see Asia powering the other global markets?
Well, this is the era of emerging markets. When I graduated from NYU over 20 years ago with a PhD, emerging markets were still in the middle of newspapers. Today, when you open any newspaper, emerging markets lead. And so things have changed. It's not just the markets, but what's coming out of Asia is also innovation. And so I think all of those, the transition, it's more a two-way street than it was. And it's a very healthy sign.
Having researched extensively on business environments across India and Southeast Asian region, what are the conclusions that have been drawn? Well,
my husband and I, George and I, started working on emerging markets before they were fashionable. And of course, I was born in India, and I knew that markets were not exactly as described in the West. But when we lived in Singapore and we saw Southeast Asia's growth, then we noticed that what the textbooks, because we're college professors, what the textbooks described was really not what was happening on the ground. Now, there were two realities, and the information that was used in decision making was not what we thought managers should be using, and that often gave local companies an advantage over multinational corporations. And so we wrote our first couple of books, New Asian Emperors, which was on Southeast Asia, and then The Chinese Tao of Business, which was on China, on how business environments actually work. We've continued to do business work on Asia. So our latest book is Subsidies to Chinese Industry, which talks about the hidden advantage of subsidization of Chinese industries and how that has changed the world economy in a very short period of time.
Chinese industry and its subsidies have intrigued you and formed the major part of your study. Are there success stories or policy strategies that the Indian side could be an area of interest?
Oh, I don't think India should be learning from China in this regard. This is a hollow success, which is what we talk about, and a success that is ephemeral. India's success is far more real and far more solid than China's. China's is based on an export-led growth model. India's is based on a domestic market model. So I think India is ahead of the game there.
Based on your research on the evolution of global energy, what are the energy requirements of the future with reference to the Asian continent?
Oh, it's a huge, not just a source of energy in the case of natural gas or oil, offshore oil, but also it's a huge consumer of energy. China, of course, is the largest consumer of coal, also the largest producer of coal. But India and China have policies in place to move towards renewable energy, not just to satisfy energy demands, but also to battle problems like pollution. And so, yes, it's a huge growth market here.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
joining us.